QuitSmokingWeed.com, the podcast on Spotify.
White-knuckle willpower doesn't fail because you're weak. It fails because it was never designed to work long-term. Last episode, we mapped the phases after quitting. Today, we look at why the approach most people use is the one most likely to fail.
We really are talking directly to a very specific profile of person today. These are folks who have tried to quit maybe 3, 4, or even 5 times.
Relying entirely on their own sheer mental resistance.
Completely. They gather all their strength on a Monday morning, white-knuckle their way through the week, and inevitably relapse by Thursday.
And then they immediately blame their own character, don't they?
They do. They look in the mirror and genuinely think they lack discipline or fortitude. They think they are missing some fundamental moral strength that other successful people seem to possess.
They view their inability to stay away from cannabis as this deeply personal failing.
And in our program, we consistently see people beating themselves up over these repeated failures. It is profoundly difficult to watch.
Because they are fighting a structural biological battle using completely the wrong set of tools.
That is the core issue. You just cannot bully your own brain into long-term sobriety. We have to introduce a completely different framework, one that takes the massive burden off sheer mental resistance.
So to understand why we need a new framework, we first have to thoroughly understand the biological reality. We have to look at why the old framework collapses so predictably under pressure.
The fundamental error most people make is treating willpower like it is a moral character trait.
Like it's a spiritual reservoir, where you either have a strong soul or a weak one.
But human biology tells a much more mechanical story. Willpower is a finite biological resource. We have to break down the exact brain mechanics at play here.
Let's do it.
The prefrontal cortex is the sophisticated part of your brain that handles logical thinking, long-term planning, and impulse control. It is essentially the rational adult in the room.
Keeping everything organized.
Doing exactly that, making sure you make good choices for your future. But this rational adult operates at peak capacity in the early morning after a full night of rest.
And it requires an enormous amount of physical energy to operate.
A massive amount. And it progressively drains with every single decision you make throughout the day. Deciding what to eat for breakfast drains it slightly.
Navigating frustrating bumper-to-bumper traffic drains it further.
Managing difficult, highly nuanced social interactions at work takes a massive toll on that exact same energy pool.
I mean, every time you bite your tongue instead of snapping at a coworker, you're actively spending willpower currency.
You are. Or forcing yourself to focus on a tedious spreadsheet. By the time the evening rolls around, you are dealing with a severe biological deficit.
You literally feel the fatigue setting in, not just in your body, but in your ability to be patient.
We refer to this as the 8 a.m. versus 10 p.m. phenomenon. By 9 p.m., the limbic system becomes dominant. This is the ancient, emotional, highly reward-seeking center of the brain.
The limbic system does not care about your long-term career goals at all, does it?
Not one bit. It doesn't care about your health metrics or your personal aspirations. It operates purely on survival instincts. It only desires immediate relief, comfort, and pleasure.
Which explains perfectly why someone who was 100% committed to quitting at 8 a.m. is suddenly fiercely negotiating with themselves by 10 p.m.
The rational brain is effectively clocked out for the day. The emotional brain has taken over the controls entirely.
It makes me think of how my smartphone battery operates. I wake up, take it off the charger, and I have a full 100% charge. I use it all day for complex work tasks, managing unexpected stress, keeping my temper in check.
Every moment of self-regulation takes a percentage point away.
By the time I get home and face my absolute strongest evening cravings, I'm basically trying to run a massive, heavy, power-draining application on 1% battery. The phone is going to freeze and crash.
Your brain does the exact same thing when pushed beyond its biological limits. A depleted battery makes you incredibly vulnerable.
So we really need to examine what exactly is attacking you in those specific vulnerable evening hours.
Because you are not just dealing with a passive lack of energy, you are dealing with an active, highly conditioned threat to your sobriety that has been deeply ingrained over a long period of time.
Cannabis is not just a substance you consume. Over years of regular use, it embeds itself deeply into the architecture of daily life.
It literally rewires the functional pathways of the brain. What we consistently see is that the stress management system, the sleep regulation system, and the reward system all end up running entirely through THC.
Wow. So when you encounter stress, your brain no longer produces its own calming chemicals naturally.
Because it has outsourced that entire job to the plant. For a daily user, Cannabis becomes the ultimate after-work decompression ritual.
It is the primary, undeniable signal to the physical body that the day is finally over.
It acts as the singular, heavily relied upon mechanism for transitioning from a high-stress operating state to a relaxed resting state. It is no longer just about the chemical high.
It is about the transition itself, and environmental cues violently compound this biological rewiring issue.
They really do. It is not just about feeling internally stressed. It is about the physical environment surrounding you. Sitting on the specific couch where you always smoke acts as a massive trigger.
Or the specific time of day.
Even something as simple as seeing a grinder sitting on the kitchen counter sets off a chain reaction. These visual and spatial cues trigger a massive dopamine release in anticipation of use.
Before your conscious brain even has time to formulate a decision.
Think about the famous psychological experiments with dogs salivating when they hear a bell. Your brain recognizes the familiar pattern of the living room and starts the chemical cascade before you are even consciously aware that you want to smoke.
This raises an interesting question about the nature of cravings themselves. I often push back on this a bit. I wonder if a craving is actually a physical chemical desire for THC in the bloodstream, or if it is just a desperate psychological craving for the functional routine that the person lost.
It frequently feels like people are mourning the loss of their comfortable evening ritual far more than the chemical effects of the plant itself.
Exactly what I mean.
But the reality is that it is both of those things acting simultaneously. The body wants the chemical, and the mind wants the familiar comfort of the routine.
And this combination creates a massive, painful gap in the person's day.
If the brain is physically conditioned to expect this entire ritual, and your willpower is completely drained by the time those specific environmental cues hit, fighting it in the moment is an unwinnable battle.
Which forces us to question if willpower should even be part of the equation at all when dealing with this severe level of conditioning.
We actually see a fascinating internal debate regarding the long-term utility of willpower among the people we work with.
Tell me about that.
One perspective strongly argues that willpower is an absolute trap. This view suggests that relying on it creates a devastating cycle of shame when it inevitably fails under the intense pressure of daily life.
So proponents of this view suggest we should design willpower out of the recovery process entirely.
They believe the focus should be 100% on structural environmental changes. That way, the individual never has to rely on mental fortitude in a moment of weakness.
If you design the environment perfectly, the decision is already made for you.
Mm-hmm.
You never have to flex that exhausted mental muscle.
But I often push back on this idea. Telling people willpower is entirely useless feels dangerous because it sounds like we are giving them a free pass to give up.
So what is the opposing perspective?
The opposing perspective argues that willpower still fundamentally matters as a foundational force. The vital nuance here is that willpower is not meant for staying quit moment to moment on a random Tuesday evening.
I see.
You desperately need a highly concentrated burst of it to make the initial structural changes in the first place. Someone has to actually make the incredibly tough choice to gather up the stash, throw it in the dumpster, change the living environment, and fully commit to the difficult process.
You need a powerful spark to start the engine, even if that spark is not what keeps the car running down the highway.
That is a perfect way to put it. Telling people willpower is an inadequate long-term tool does not mean they are let off the hook completely.
Here is an observation. It simply concentrates their mental effort into one high-leverage moment rather than distributing it across thousands of weak, vulnerable moments.
You use your energy once to build a sturdy brick wall, rather than using your energy every single day to physically fight off invaders at the border.
And this focused burst of initial energy is exactly what leads into the concrete structural changes we strongly recommend.
Structure works because it fundamentally removes the need to make crucial decisions under adverse, highly stressful conditions. You make all your important decisions in advance.
When your motivation is high and your prefrontal cortex is fully functional and well-rested.
Building that structure starts with committing to a specific timeline. We constantly advise setting a concrete quit date 3 to 7 days out.
You have to write it down clearly on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
You tell someone else about it to immediately stop the internal negotiation of maybe tomorrow.
Putting it out into the world makes it real. And once that date is set, you have to drastically alter your physical reality before the day actually arrives.
That means completely removing all physical access. Throw away the cannabis, the rolling papers, the lighters, delete your dealer contacts from your phone.
You cannot leave a tiny emergency stash hidden in a drawer. That emergency stash is just a planned relapse waiting for a bad Tuesday evening.
You also have to drastically change the physical environment itself. Rearrange the furniture in your living room and change exactly where you sit to watch television.
This actively disrupts the visual landscape. It interrupts the automatic neural associations before they can even fire in your brain.
Because when you walk into a room that looks entirely different, the brain does not automatically trigger the old smoking routine. The physical template has been broken.
We also need to thoroughly examine the method of quitting. Stopping cold turkey consistently outperforms tapering for heavy daily users.
Why is that? Tapering sounds gentler.
Tapering forces a daily, exhausting decision about quantity. Every single day, you have to wake up and decide if you are going to smoke a little bit or perhaps just a little bit more because it was an exceptionally hard day.
That keeps the draining internal negotiation alive and active. You are bleeding willpower, simply trying to moderate.
Stopping completely eliminates the daily choice entirely. The decision is already made, which frees up an immense amount of mental bandwidth. The internal debate is silenced because the answer is always zero.
Let me ask you a question. Why do so many people in our program vehemently insist that right now is simply not the right time to quit cold turkey?
They always present a seemingly logical reason. They point to a highly stressful project currently happening at work or a complex family issue that needs their full attention first.
They sound completely rational when they explain why they need to wait just one more month.
But that is not logical reasoning at all. It is literally withdrawal physiology talking through them. The brain intimately knows that a sudden, sharp drop in THC is coming, and it generates anticipatory anxiety to prevent that drop from happening.
The brain prefers the predictable comfort of the addiction over the unpredictable discomfort of change.
It will invent any excuse necessary to maintain the current chemical baseline.
Modifying your external space and forcefully eliminating choices is crucial to combat this physiological pushback. But you also have to fundamentally change how you view yourself inside that newly structured space.
We are looking deeply at the identity dimension now. There is a subtle but critical difference between two very distinct mindsets.
I am someone trying not to smoke versus I am someone who quit.
The first statement constantly positions quitting as an ongoing, exhausting act of daily resistance. It creates lingering mental tension that the brain instinctively wants to resolve by finally giving in and smoking.
Because you are still identifying as a smoker who is merely denying themselves their favorite activity.
The second statement boldly makes sobriety the core identity, which inherently supports and reinforces the new behavior without constant mental strain.
But to properly support that new identity, you must heavily structure your evenings completely for the first 2 weeks, specifically from dinner all the way to bedtime.
The limbic system absolutely abhors a vacuum. It will aggressively fill any unstructured, quiet time with intense cravings and intrusive thoughts about using.
You have to decide completely in advance what precisely fills the specific 20 to 60-minute window where smoking previously happened.
You cannot just sit on the rearranged couch and do nothing while hoping the craving magically disappears. You need a proactive plan. Maybe you cook a complex meal, maybe you go to the gym, or maybe you build something with your hands.
Even with perfectly executed structure, the walls will occasionally get breached by a bad day or unexpected stress. We need to provide concrete tools for those specific high-risk moments.
When a massive craving hits hard, leave the room immediately to completely break the physical cue response chain. Change your location entirely.
Use freezing cold water on your face. Take a brisk, fast-paced walk outside, or call someone on the phone to forcefully activate different neural systems.
Splashing cold water on your face actually triggers the mammalian dive reflex, which physically slows your heart rate and short-circuits the physiological panic of a craving.
Cravings biologically peak and pass within 15 to 20 minutes, regardless of whether you act on them or not. You just need to outlast that short physiological window.
Also, there is a strict, non-negotiable rule we enforce regarding those first 2 weeks. Alcohol must be completely avoided.
Oh, definitely. It directly impairs the prefrontal cortex, significantly lowering your inhibitions and making a full relapse highly likely.
When you drink, you are actively draining the exact battery you need to maintain your new identity.
Think about someone who decides to adopt a strict plant-based diet. They do not spend all day actively trying not to eat meat while staring hungrily at a steak.
They simply adopt the firm identity of a vegetarian. That fundamental identity shift ends the internal exhausting debate immediately.
A vegetarian does not negotiate with themselves over eating a cheeseburger, because doing so violates who they fundamentally are as a person.
Adopting the identity of a non-smoker operates on the exact same psychological principle. You are no longer depriving yourself of something you want, you are simply acting in accordance with who you now are.
Pulling all these structural shifts, environmental changes, and identity transformations together gives us a complete, highly actionable roadmap for moving forward.
It completely removes the outdated reliance on the myth of endless willpower and replaces it with intelligent biological strategy.
It really does shift the whole paradigm.
Consider this final, deeply provocative thought as you step forward. All your past relapses were never definitive proof of your personal weakness or lack of character.
They were simply a massive design flaw in your underlying strategy.
You were using a tool that was biologically guaranteed to break under heavy pressure. Now that you have the proper architectural blueprint to completely redesign your environment and your internal identity, the outcome is entirely in your hands.
More at quit-smoking-weed.com.